Alright, welcome to my tutorial on how to make a basic NSAATS Zeus template. Alright, so the first step is done in the launcher. Due to technical reasons and OBS being a difficult piece of crap, it is not letting me record the launcher. Basically, you want to record with as few mods as possible. As you can tell by my settings down here, I have only 6 mods enabled. Community-based add-ons, CBA, ACE, ASEX, and the 3 cup maps, CWA, maps, and core. The fewer mods you have, the better it's going to be. Because if you have additional mods on, anytime they update, you need to then update your templates. Or you're going to start seeing a lot of bugs. The other problem is as well, if we say that we want to take that mod off the mod list, you then also need to remake all of your templates. Which is a massive pain, and I really hate doing it. So you will probably also hate doing it. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to pick a map to set up a template on. So let's say we're going to create a new template for let's say Everon. So you wait for it to load up. So the first step in making one of your templates, making any template really, is finding an area to put the spawn area, to put the gear up area where we start. We get our guns together. We do our briefings. All right. The thing people like to do is they like to place these near main towns. Like MUX, I know that's not how you say it, but you know, I don't care, I'm an American. Or more popularly, near an airfield. While that is useful to a point, in the fact that we can deploy right from there in a plane, the problem ends up being you've effectively taken out this entire area from where we can run an op. So normally most map makers will put these little islands off to the side of where normal areas are, where you can then put a spawn area so that it doesn't interfere with the main map. So this is where I have my current one. Now there's a couple terms that I'm going to be using. You've got first off, you have entities. Alright, an entity is anything from these lists here. Anything that is either an AI or can be inhabited by a player. So like I place this crewman down, that's an entity. Alright, entities are anything that can be inhabited by players. Right. Next you have props. Props are literally everything else. So if you want to place a rabbit, that's a prop. If you want to place down a decontamination tent, that's a prop. This is the stuff that the players will interact with in the game. Modules, these are things that don't physically exist. This is going to be where your Zeus is. The modules enable you to do certain things. Like with ASEX, if you want people to be able to use the Fortify tool, you have to place the module down. It doesn't directly interact with the players, but it does directly affect how the players play. Lastly is going to be your logic entities. Alright, there's really only 2 that you're going to mess with from here, and that's game logic and headless client. So now that you have your area here, when you're creating your start area, there's a few key things you want to have in this start area. First off, you want to put down your entities here. So if I'm only going to place down, let's say we would need a recon patrol, you need to place down these entities here. You also need, typically you're going to want a crate or something that can be used as a arsenal. That way the players have an actual area where they can gear up at. Everything else in the spawn area is peripheral. It's not necessary. It makes it look nice, it gives us areas to work with, but ultimately, those are... Oh, and you also need to put your spawns down. So, for the rest of this part, I will be going over how to set up your entities to work effectively. So, first off, you don't really ever want to use these. They're great if you're doing an entirely pre-built mission, which I am not. This is purely for the Zeus template. Alright. Because we don't run in a traditional military sense, most of those formations are not going to be of use to us. So, the other thing to keep in mind as well, when you're talking about the stack of units in the role selection screen, that is all based off of when you place the item down. It doesn't matter what you name it. It doesn't sort alphabetically. It sorts by the order in which it's placed. So in this case, we want Tark's role to be on the top. So here we've got our officer. Boom. Alright. One of the other things that should be near the top, the field command team. The field command team is an element made up of 2 officers, a medic, and a radio man. Right? Placement doesn't really matter. Right? Placement only matters if you're setting up enemies to fight. This is simply where the players will start. I usually have them organized into some sort of formation, that way I make sure that everything that needs to get done with those entities gets done. Right? So next, we've got OpsCom. OpsCom is an element full of operators, full of officers, I should say. So there's a very easy way to get all of these guys down into one element. If you press and hold Control, you'll see a little plus sign pop up. Now I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're all automatically in the same element. So here, we now have OpsCom. Because you've got our senior chief, our junior chief, and 2 slots for operation coordinators. So now we're going to move on to our teams. So now you have your team leader. So for all intents and purposes, this is red team leader. Boom. You have 2 operators for red team. And you have the medic. There you are. And as I said, it's all placed down on order in which you place them. So if you want the medic to be near the top, you remove those other 2. You place down the combat lifesaver. Boom. And then you place down the rifleman. Boom, boom. And you can realistically use whatever role for the rifleman. You could use sharpshooter, squad leader. I stick with rifleman. Alright? Because even though I'm able to override the role names, when you're looking at them, it will still say officer, sharpshooter, and ultimately, operators are still riflemen. Different name, same overall purpose. They're there to go kill things. Now when it comes to medic, it's important to use that role as one of the roles with the little symbol in it for medic. Alright, that ensures that role has medical perms, which will allow them in ACE to give blood and do things that medics normally do. So now we've got that element. Right, and then it's just a simple matter of essentially copy and paste. Boom. Now you've got green team. And then, boom. Now you have blue team. Alright? And then, boom. You have black team. Although I will get into some of the intricacies of black team in a bit. Alright. Lastly, you have your reserve teams. Alright? These roles are just as important as the teams. Alright? So in this case, we're going to have a squad leader. You're going to want to make sure that you have an adequate amount of rifleman roles. I've been going with, I think, 3 or 4. You want to make sure you throw in a couple engineers. Boom, boom, boom. And a couple medics. Boom, boom. Let me go ahead and face these guys the right way around to fix my OCD. Alright, so now boom. You have your first reserve team, and then simply copy and paste to get your second one. This sets it for blue 4. When you're making a template like this, you do then also need to go through and do the exact same thing with both green 4 and red 4. So that way, no matter what side we have to be on, we have the roles that we need to do this. Alright. So when it comes to making the different titles that I have, so let's go with Tark, our first officer. So you want to double click on him, and variable name is not that important, right? With it in this case, you tick off the player. You're going to make sure that it's playable though. So in the role description, you're going to go CEO at chief executives. Bump him up to colonel. Alright. This little bit of coding here is using coding from CBA. This is what gives your team your name in the role selection screen. This gives him CEO, that designates what the actual role is, and this designates his element, chief executives. Right? So now you go through and you do it for the rest of them. You want to make sure that all of them become playable as well. So you're going to go role description, regional manager at field command team. Make him a captain. Right? Then you do the same here, except that once you're naming the people in there, you just need to put, assistant regional manager. Then put him, because you've already named the element, so these guys are already inside of that element. Playable medical coordinator. Make him a sergeant. Then you've got the radio operator. Boom. Alright, so if these are specific named roles, and roles that don't change that often, you can change what they're good at. So in my case, as the assistant regional manager in a role that hasn't changed in well over a year, you can go ahead and you can provide, if you go to ACE options, you can equip them as an engineer and a medic in DoD. Boom. Now that role is automatically imbued with those abilities. I only will say to do that for specific roles, because team leaders tend to change around a little bit more frequently. Every couple months the teams get reshuffled, which is why I do not provide that kind of benefit to everybody. Obviously for roles that don't change that often, like in the case of OpsCom or in Black Team, that's going to be different. So you just go through, make it playable, And then you go team leader at red team. Boom. Then you go medtech operator. You can have multiple of the same name with this. So in this one, we're going to go Senior Chief of Operations at Operations Command Team. Become a captain. Right. Then, Junior Chief of Operations. Operations Coordinator. Operations Coordinator. Sergeant. The rank isn't important. I put that on there just as a nice little touch. That can realistically be changed anywhere. I'm gonna refrain from doing the rest of these guys just because that takes a while, and you guys probably get it at this point. Black team is a little different. Black team has actual names. So like Kali is Sunbreaker, Pepper is Dawnblade, and Pepper is Gunslinger. And each one of them have roles. Kerman is their team's engineer. Pepper is their medic. And Kali is the team lead. So you're going to put, now we don't put their names on there, we put what they're called on there. So this is going to be Sunbreaker at Black team. You can put it as a colonel because it's technically Kali's specified role. Now because it's Kali's specified role, as he is engineer trained and demolitions trained, he can get both of those added on because that is his specific named role. And this is Pepper, so this is Dawn Blade. Right? And then he's got his engineer, demolitions, and medic perms. This is Kerman's role, so this is Gunslinger. And we need to make sure that he has his engineer perms and his EOD perms. And then this is obviously, I'm just putting this one just for sake of my sanity, operator. So, yep, that's a little intricacy with Black team. The rest of them don't really matter. Obviously, if, let's say Citadel has, a marksman with them, you can always, throw down a marksman slot, and, you can always put designated marksman, boom. So when you're making the formations, that's not the only thing you need to change. So you're gonna go here, and you're gonna go here. It says call sign alpha 11. That's not how this works. Chief executives. This is what makes it so that when they put into chat and it says Mando or it says flagship or it says chief executives, that's where that has to go. So you do the same for this flagship, as this is officially captained by Joris. You've got Mando. You've got Spartan. Now, one thing you can do from this menu is you can en masse make them playable. So if you forget to do that on a couple, you can go through and do it en masse. Now there are a couple roles here. I'm going to quick touch on the variable names. There's a couple roles that require the variable name. Alright, they are these four right here. Alright, so in this case, this is Senior Chief of Operations, so SRCO. And this is in this case, spelling and capitalization is very important. I will be touching on that in a later segment when I'm going over modules. And then you have your JRCO. Then you have your OC. Now, you cannot have two of the same, so I go OM and OC for Operations Manager, Operations Coordinator. Doesn't matter, because if you see, I can't put, it won't let me use the same variable name, so I have to change that. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put a cut in here. When I come back, I will be going over the building up of the base area and what's actually needed, what's peripheral, what's nice to have, etc. Oh, and one last note when it comes to these elements. If you're making templates en masse and you don't feel like doing that, if you highlight the whole element and you go up here to compositions and to custom, you can actually create your own custom elements. So you can save from this one, title it, training, video, sample. You can set the author, so let's say, this one was given to me by, Barack Obama, and let's say it's men from the story. Boom. So now that'll sort under men story, training video sample, boom. And it's all done with their own little things as well.